I was standing backstage at the Stanford University commencement ceremony, the heavy fabric of my doctoral gown clinging to my skin in the humid California afternoon. In my right hand, I clutched a rolled-up piece of parchment, my valedictorian speech. It was the culmination of 8 years of sleepless nights, thousands of hours in a windowless lab, and a lifetime of trying to prove I was worthy of being seen. My heart was racing, but not because of the 2,000 people waiting for me on the other side of the curtain. It was racing because of the device vibrating in my left hand. I knew I shouldn't have looked. I told myself to put the phone away, to focus on the honor, the achievement, the moment. But the compulsion was too strong. I swiped the screen, and there it was. My sister Chloe had posted a new Instagram story just 3 minutes ago. The contrast was enough to make my stomach turn. On my screen, the white peaks of Aspen, Colorado glistened under a perfect blue sky. There was my mother, my father, Chloe, and her boyfriend of 8 months, Julian. They were gathered around a rustic wooden table at an exclusive ski-in resort, raising oversized crystal flutes of vintage champagne. Everyone was glowing, their faces flushed with the kind of genuine joy I had spent 31 years trying to elicit from them. The caption, written in a playful, cursive font, read, "Celebrating our favorite guy, best birthday weekend ever." It was punctuated by a skiing emoji and a heart. I stared at the image until the screen dimmed. I looked down at my own hands, stained with the faint, invisible scent of lab chemicals and ink. Just 7 days ago, I had sat my mother down on a FaceTime call. I told her, specifically, that I had secured 3 VIP seats in the front row, prime territory at a Stanford graduation. I told her I was the first person in our family history to earn a PhD. I told her I was the one giving the commencement address. She had looked me in the eye through the camera and promised, "Harper, honey, we wouldn't miss this for the world. We are so incredibly proud of you." Those words felt like ash in my mouth now. 1,000 miles away, Julian, a man my parents had known for less than a year, was receiving the celebration I had earned through a decade of sacrifice. I leaned my head against the cold backstage wall and closed my eyes. The irony was a physical weight. I had just completed my PhD in neurogenetics. My entire dissertation was focused on the genetic markers of degenerative brain diseases. I spent my youth studying how to preserve the memories of families, how to give people more time to recognize the ones they love before the darkness of the disease takes over. I was trying to save other people's families from forgetting each other, while my own family had intentionally chosen to forget me. The ceremony coordinator, a tall man with a headset, tapped my shoulder. 2 minutes, Dr. Vance. You're heading to the podium first." I nodded, my throat dry. I took a step toward the heavy velvet curtain and peered through a small gap. The stadium was a sea of cardinal red. I saw thousands of parents holding up "That's my girl" signs, fathers with GoPros strapped to their chests, mothers weeping with pride before a single name had even been called. And then, my eyes landed on the front row. 3 seats, 3 small white cards taped to the headrests that read, "Reserved for family." All 3 were empty. I had actually turned down a request from my lab partner, whose elderly grandparents had flown in from overseas and needed extra space, just so I could keep those seats for people who were currently clicking post on a ski trip photo. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it crystallized. The girl who wanted to please them, the girl who thought one more degree or one more award would finally make her the favorite, she disappeared. In her place stood a woman who was tired of being a ghost at her own table. I looked down at my prepared speech. It was a safe speech. It was full of platitudes about the bright future and the debt we owe our mentors. It was the kind of speech that would make my parents look like the supportive pillars they never were. I crumpled the paper in my hand. I wasn't going to give that speech. But before I tell you what I said on that stage, and how it ended up destroying my family's reputation forever, I want to know who is out there with me right now. This story is traveling further than I ever imagined, and it's reaching people who know exactly what it feels like to be invisible. Drop a comment below. Tell me what city or country you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one of these because for the first time in my life, I'm realized that the family we choose is often more important than the one we're born into. Okay, let me take you back to where the cracks first started. Because to understand why I did what I did on that stage, you have to understand the life of a girl who was never enough. My name is Harper Vance, and this is how I finally stopped saving seats for people who never show up. To understand why those 3 empty chairs in the front row of Stanford were the final straw, you have to understand the hierarchy of the Vance family. Growing up, there was a silent rule in our house. Chloe was the sun, and the rest of us were just lucky to catch her light. My parents didn't just love Chloe, they were obsessed with her. She was the easy child, the one who excelled at social grace and cheerleading, while I was the difficult one, mostly because I spent my time in the library instead of on a sideline. I remember my high school graduation like it was yesterday. I was the valedictorian then, too. I had worked myself to the bone to get that title, thinking it would be the golden ticket to my father's respect. But on the night of the ceremony, my mother spent the entire car ride talking about Chloe's upcoming dance recital. When my name was called and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I looked for my parents in the crowd. They weren't looking at me. My father was busy adjusting the settings on his camera, making sure he had enough storage space for Chloe's performance the following night. We celebrated my 4 years of 4.0 GPA and a full ride scholarship to Stanford at a local chain diner. My father didn't even make a toast. He just checked his watch and said, "We should hurry up. Chloe needs her rest for the dress rehearsal tomorrow." But there was one person who saw me. My grandmother, Nana Rose. Nana Rose was the only one who didn't look at me like I was a trophy or a ghost. She was a brilliant woman who had been a nurse in the 60s, and she was the one who told me that my brain was a gift, not a burden. But when I was 19, Nana started to change. It began with misplaced keys, then forgotten names, and eventually, she didn't recognize the house she had lived in for 40 years. Watching the most brilliant woman I knew lose her mind to Alzheimer's was the moment my life's mission was born. I didn't just want to be a doctor. I wanted to decode the very fabric of our DNA so that no other granddaughter would have to stand in a room and have her grandmother ask, "Who are you?" The irony is so thick it's almost suffocating. I spent the next decade of my life becoming a world-class expert in human connection at a cellular level. I was researching how to keep families together, how to preserve the self. And while I was in the lab until 4 a.m. discovering ways to save the memories of strangers, my own parents were actively deleting me from theirs. Let me give you a specific example of how lopsided our world was. When Chloe graduated from high school 3 years after me, she didn't have a scholarship. She barely had a passing grade in math. But my parents threw a party that the entire town talked about for months. They rented a white tent for the backyard, hired a professional catering team, and even had a live band. My father stood on a chair and gave a 20-minute speech about how Chloe was the soul of this family, and how her vibrant spirit was more important than any academic achievement. I stood in the back by the snack table, a Stanford junior with a published research paper, and I realized then I wasn't just competing with Chloe. I was competing with a version of reality that didn't include me. I used to tell myself, "Just wait until the PhD, Harper. They'll have to see you then. No one can ignore a doctorate from the top program in the country." I poured all my grief from Nana Rose's death and all my longing for my parents' attention into my work. I became a machine. I skipped vacations, I worked through holidays, I lived on caffeine and the hope that one day my father would look at me the way he looked at Chloe's cheerleading trophies. Then came Julian. Julian is Chloe's newest boyfriend. He's a travel influencer with a penchant for expensive watches and a complete lack of a stable job. In the 8 months he's been dating my sister, my parents have treated him with more warmth than they've shown me in a decade. Why? Because Julian makes Chloe happy, and making Chloe happy is the family's primary mission. So, when I called my mother a week before graduation, I was desperate. I said, "Mom, this isn't just another degree. I'm the valedictorian. I'm receiving the highest honor the department gives. Please, be there. I've already paid for your hotel. I've got the front row seats." She laughed. That light, airy laugh that always made me feel like I was being dramatic. "Harper, stop worrying. We've already marked the calendar. We'll be there with bells on. We're so proud of our little doctor." I believed her. I actually believed her. I spent that whole week feeling like maybe, just maybe, the tide had finally turned. I even bought a new dress for my mother to wear, a deep navy silk that I thought would look beautiful in the graduation photos I imagined we'd take together. Now, as I stand backstage, I'm looking at that Instagram story of them in Aspen. They aren't just there, they are ecstatic. Julian is holding a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than my first month's rent in grad school. They aren't just missing my graduation, they are actively celebrating its replacement. I realize now that the reserved cards on those empty chairs aren't just for my family, they are placeholders for a fantasy I've been chasing my entire life. The ceremony coordinator looks at me again. "It's time, Harper. The provost is introducing you." I look at the navy silk dress I bought for my mother, still sitting in its box in my apartment. Then I look at the crumpled, safe speech in my hand. I'm done being the invisible child. I'm done saving seats for people who treat my life's work like a footnote to a boyfriend's birthday. Before I walk out there, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been the Harper in your family? The one who does everything right, only to be outshined by the one who does everything wrong? If you've ever felt like you were screaming for attention in a room full of people who only hear what they want to, stay with me. Because what I did when I reached that microphone didn't just change my life, it started a fire that my parents are still trying to put out. Let's go to the podium. I have something to say. As the roar of the crowd intensified outside the curtain, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my own doctoral robes. The betrayal wasn't just a sting, it was a cold, hard realization that the people who gave me life were never actually going to be the people who supported my life. But just as I was about to spiral into that dark place of feeling completely unloved, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an Instagram notification. It was a text from Dr. Evelyn Ross. Dr. Ross was my faculty advisor, but that title didn't do her justice. She was a legend in the world of neurogenetics, a 65-year-old powerhouse who had spent 40 years deconstructing the mysteries of the human brain. She was the one who saw the potential in my research when it was just a messy pile of data and a wild theory. She was the one who sat with me in the lab at 3 a.m. drinking lukewarm coffee and reminding me that the failures in our experiments were just directions pointing us toward the truth. Her text read, "Front row, far right. I'm here, Harper. Breathe. The world needs to hear what you have to say." I felt a lump form in my throat. You see, Evelyn wasn't supposed to be here today. Her daughter's family had flown in from London specifically to celebrate Evelyn's granddaughter getting into medical school. It was a huge family brunch, the kind of milestone event that Evelyn lived for. I had told her months ago, "Evelyn, please, stay with your family. It's just a ceremony." But Evelyn had looked at me with those sharp, kind eyes and said, "Harper, some moments in life are non-negotiable. I've watched you sacrifice everything for this degree. I am not letting you stand on that stage without someone in your corner." She had left her own family celebration, a moment of pure joy with her own flesh and blood, to sit in a stadium full of strangers for me. The contrast was so sharp it felt like a physical blow. A woman who shared none of my DNA had driven 3 hours and sacrificed a rare family reunion just to see me walk for 10 seconds. Meanwhile, my biological parents were 1,000 miles away, toasting to a man who couldn't even tell you what my PhD was in. "Ladies and gentlemen," the provost's voice boomed over the speakers, "please welcome our 2026 valedictorian, Dr. Harper Vance." The applause hit me like a wave. I stepped out from behind the curtain, the bright California sun blinding me for a split second. As I walked toward the podium, my eyes instinctively went to the front row. There they were, 3 empty seats. The white, reserved cards fluttered slightly in the breeze. They looked like teeth missing from a smile. They were a public declaration of my family's absence. But then, I saw her. At the very end of that same row, sitting right next to the emptiness, was Dr. Evelyn Ross. She was wearing her best floral dress and a wide-brimmed hat, clutching a small bouquet of yellow roses, my favorite. When our eyes met, she didn't just clap. She stood up. She gave me a firm, resolute nod that said, "I see you. You are enough." I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. The feedback echoed through the stadium, and then silence. 2,000 people waiting for me to tell them how the future is in our hands. I looked down at the safe speech I had written, the one where I thanked my supportive parents for always believing in me. The words looked like lies on the page. If I read that speech, I would be participating in my own erasure. I would be helping my parents maintain the lie that they were the people who helped me get here. I looked at the empty chairs again. I thought about the ski resort in Aspen. I thought about Julian's champagne. And then I looked at Evelyn's yellow roses. A strange calm washed over me. I realized that the greatest discovery I had made at Stanford wasn't in a petri dish or a genetic sequence. It was the discovery of where I truly belonged. I took the prepared speech, folded it slowly, and set it on the corner of the lectern. I didn't need it. I leaned into the microphone. My voice was steady, but it had an edge to it that I didn't know I possessed. "Before I begin the address I prepared," I said, my voice echoing off the stadium walls, "I need to talk to you about data, because as scientists, we are taught that data doesn't lie. And today, I am looking at a very specific set of data right here in the front row." I saw the provost lean forward, a look of confusion on his face. I saw the cameras zoom in on me. "Today," I continued, "I want to talk to you about the physics of an empty chair. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to take a second. Think about the person who showed up for you when they didn't have to, the person who isn't family by blood, but is family by choice. If you have an Evelyn in your life, I want you to pause this right now and type their name in the comments. Let's fill this space with the names of the people who actually stay." I took a deep breath, gripped the sides of the podium until my knuckles turned white, and I began to tell the truth. And let me tell you, once the truth starts coming out, there is no way to put it back in the bottle. Stay with me, because what I said next didn't just shock the people in that stadium, it reached the ski lodge in Aspen, and it changed the trajectory of my life forever. The silence in the stadium was absolute. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air right before a massive thunderstorm. I could see the red light of the main camera pointing directly at my face, broadcasting my image to the giant LED screens and to thousands of people watching the live stream at home. "As a neuroscientist," I began, my voice echoing with a newfound authority, "I spend my life looking for patterns. We look for what is present, but more importantly, we look for what is missing. Because in science, a void is just as informative as a solid mass." I stepped slightly to the side of the podium and pointed my finger directly at the front row. "There are 3 seats here at the very front. They were reserved for my mother, my father, and my sister. I spent 31 years trying to earn the right to see them filled. I thought if I worked harder, if I became a doctor, if I became a valedictorian at Stanford, I would finally be data that was worth their time." A collective gasp rippled through the first few rows. I saw a few faculty members exchange worried glances, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. "Right now," I continued, "those people are in Aspen. They are celebrating a birthday for someone they met a few months ago because that was more convenient than flying here to see the culmination of a decade of my life's work. For years, I told myself that I was the problem. I thought I wasn't enough to keep them in their seats. But standing here today, looking at these empty chairs, I realized something that I want everyone in this audience to hear, especially those of you who feel invisible." I leaned closer to the microphone, my eyes burning. "Disappointment is data. It is the most honest information you will ever receive. It tells you exactly who is in your corner and who is just a guest in your life when the weather is good. We are taught that blood is thicker than water, but in the lab, we know that water is what sustains life. blood is just a delivery system, and today, I am officially retiring from the job of saving seats for people who refuse to show up. At that moment, I looked at Dr. Evelyn Ross. A single tear was tracking down her cheek, but she was smiling, a fierce, proud smile. "I am not standing here alone," I said, my voice softening but growing more intense. "Because the chair at the end of this row is filled. It's filled by a woman who chose to be here, a woman who left her own family to make sure I wasn't a ghost today. Family isn't a DNA match. Family is a commitment. It's the person who shows up when it's inconvenient. It's the person who sees your struggle and says, 'I wouldn't miss this for the world,' and then actually stays." I looked directly into the camera lens, imagining my mother's face on her phone screen in Aspen. To my parents, if you are watching this on your ski break, thank you. Thank you for not showing up, because your absence finally gave me the space to see who was actually standing next to me the whole time. You taught me that I don't need to be enough for people who aren't looking. I turned back to the audience, my heart thumping against my ribs. To my fellow graduates, stop shrinking yourselves to fit into the shadows of people who don't appreciate your light. Stop waiting for an apology that is never coming. Build your own front row. Fill your life with people who celebrate you, not people who merely tolerate you. Because life is too short to spend it staring at empty chairs. I stepped back from the podium. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. And then, it started. It wasn't a polite clap, it was a roar. It started with the students, the ones who knew what it felt like to struggle, the ones who had their own empty chairs in their lives. Then the parents stood up, then the professors. The applause was a physical force, a standing ovation that felt like it was breaking the silence of my entire childhood. I walked off that stage, and as I reached the bottom of the stairs, Evelyn was there. She didn't say a word. She just wrapped her arms around me and held me while I finally, for the first time in years, let out a sob that had nothing to do with research and everything to do with being free. But the story didn't end with a standing ovation. Within 2 hours, a clip of my speech titled "The Physics of an Empty Chair" had been uploaded to TikTok and Twitter. By the time I reached the graduation after party, it had 500,000 views. By the next morning, it was 5 million. And that's when the Aspen group finally decided to check their phones. If you're still here, you're about to see the darkest side of family. Because when you publicly expose the truth, people don't usually apologize. They pivot, they defend, they attack. Stay with me for the next part because my mother's response to my viral speech was something I never could have predicted. And it was the moment I realized our relationship wasn't just broken, it was dangerous. Have you ever spoken your truth and had it backfire? Or did it set you free? Let me know in the comments before we move into the aftermath. This is where it gets real. By the time the sun set over Palo Alto that evening, my life had split into 2 distinct realities. In one reality, I was Dr. Harper Vance, a woman who had finally found her voice. In the other, I was a viral sensation. My phone was an endless stream of notifications, thousands of messages from strangers saying they had cried while watching my speech, that they were finally going to walk away from their own toxic families. But then, the other notifications started coming in, the ones from Aspen. It began with a text from Chloe. "No, congratulations on your PhD. No, I'm sorry we weren't there." Just a link to the video followed by, "Are you insane? You just humiliated mom and dad in front of the entire world. Julian is humiliated. You've ruined everything with your ego. Delete this now." Then, my father. A man who rarely spoke more than 3 sentences to me at a time sent a paragraph that felt like a cold blade. "Harper, I didn't spend thousands of dollars on your education for you to use it as a weapon against your own blood. You are ungrateful, bitter, and frankly, you should be ashamed of the woman you've become. Do not contact us until you are ready to issue a public apology." I sat in my dark apartment, the blue light of the phone illuminating the tears I didn't even know were falling. Not one of them asked if the speech was true. Not one of them realized that the reason the video was viral was because I had spoken a truth that millions of people lived every day. To them, my pain was just bad PR. The following week was a blur. National news outlets reached out. Daytime talk shows wanted the PhD daughter who slammed her parents. I turned them all down. I didn't want to be a professional victim. I wanted to be a scientist. I went back to the lab, back to the DNA sequences, back to the work that Nana Rose would have been proud of. But 3 months later, the silence was broken. My mother called. I stared at the screen for a full minute before answering. Hello? Harper, honey? Her voice was like honey over glass, sweet, smooth, but with a dangerous edge. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've been praying for our family. I miss you so much, baby. We all do. For a split second, the little girl inside me, the one who still wanted to be loved, leaned toward the phone. You do? Of course. We were so wrong to stay in Aspen. We see that now. The stress of Chloe's wedding planning and Julian's business just got the better of us, but we want to make it up to you. She paused, and then the hook came. I'm chairing the Vance Family Foundation Gala next month. It's for a beautiful charity that supports children's literacy. I was thinking, since you're so famous now, if you came and gave a little speech, maybe about how our family has overcome this misunderstanding, it would help us raise so much money. It would show everyone that the Vances are stronger than ever. It's a win-win, Harper. You get to promote your research, and we get our daughter back. I felt a chill run down my spine. She didn't want her daughter back. She wanted a PR shield. She wanted to use my fame to erase the fact that she had abandoned me. She was trying to buy my silence with a seat at a charity gala table. Mom, I said, my voice dead calm, did you actually listen to what I said on that stage? Or did you just count the views? Don't be difficult, Harper. I'm extending an olive branch. An olive branch is an apology, Mom. An olive branch is admitting you chose a ski trip over my life's work. What you're offering isn't a fresh start. It's a rebranding campaign, and I'm not for sale. The sweetness in her voice vanished instantly. You always were an arrogant, selfish girl. You think that degree makes you better than us? It just makes you lonelier. Enjoy your empty chairs, Harper. Because after today, that's all you'll ever have. The line went dead, and for the first time in 31 years, I didn't feel like crying. I felt light. The manipulation had failed. The data was final. I blocked all their numbers, my mother, my father, Chloe. I realized that some people would rather keep you as a villain in their story than be a supporting character in yours. But as I closed my eyes that night, I realized that my mother was wrong about one thing. My chairs weren't empty anymore, not even close. Stay with me for the final part of this journey. Because while I was losing the family I was born into, I was about to meet someone who would show me exactly why I had to go through all of that pain. A young student named Stella was about to walk into my office with a story that sounded exactly like mine, and it was my turn to decide if I was going to show up for her. Before we move to the final chapter, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a family member try to reconcile only because they needed something from you? How did you handle that phone call? Tell me your story in the comments. We're building something real here. The silence that followed the blocking of my family's numbers wasn't the cold, lonely silence I had feared. It was the quiet of a room after a chaotic, deafening storm has finally passed. For the first time in 31 years, I could hear my own heartbeat without the static of their expectations. I returned to my lab at Stanford, throwing myself into a new phase of my research. We were looking for the exact moment a brain begins to disconnect from its past. But in my personal life, I was doing the opposite. I was learning how to connect. A few months later, a knock came on my office door. It was a young woman named Stella. She was a first-year PhD student, her eyes tired and her shoulders slumped under the weight of a heavy backpack. She sat down and told me she had watched my graduation speech over 100 times. Stella was a first-generation student. Her parents didn't understand why she was wasting time with science instead of working in the family business. They told her she was selfish for wanting a life they didn't understand. She told me, with tears in her eyes, "Dr. Vance, I'm terrified that when I defend my thesis, I'll be looking at a front row of empty chairs too." I looked at Stella, and it was like looking into a mirror across time. I realized then that my pain wasn't just a burden, it was a lighthouse. "Stella," I said, leaning across the desk, "you might not be able to change who gave you your DNA, but you get to choose who sits in those seats, and I promise you this, I will be in one of them. Dr. Ross will be in another. We will fill your front row until there's no room left for ghosts." I became Stella's unofficial mentor, but more than that, I became her chosen family. I celebrated her small lab breakthroughs with cupcakes. I checked on her when she was sick, and a year later, when she stood up to present her first major research proposal, I didn't just send a good luck text. I was there, 20 minutes early, sitting in the very center of the front row, clapping until my hands turned red. Building a chosen family is a slow, deliberate act of gardening. It's not about the frantic, desperate longing of blood relations. It's about the consistent, quiet work of showing up. Dr. Evelyn Ross became the mother I deserved. My lab colleagues became the siblings I never had. We shared Thanksgiving dinners where the air was filled with laughter instead of passive-aggressive barbs. We shared birthdays where I wasn't an afterthought, but the guest of honor. I never heard from my parents again. Sometimes I'll see a photo of them on a mutual friend's social media, still in Aspen, still at galas, still smiling their perfect hollow smiles. Chloe married Julian in a lavish ceremony that reportedly cost as much as a small mansion. I wasn't invited, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care. You see, I've learned something about human biology that they will never understand. DNA is just a sequence, a blueprint of proteins and acids. It can build a body, but it cannot build a home. A home is built by the people who stay when the champagne runs out. A home is built by the people who drive 3 hours in the rain just to hear you speak for 10 minutes. If you are watching this right now and you are staring at your own empty chairs, at a graduation, a wedding, a hospital room, or just a quiet dinner table, I want you to listen to me. The problem is not you. It was never you. You are not too much, and you are not enough. You are simply planting your garden in soil that is too toxic to grow anything beautiful. It is okay to stop watering the weeds. It is okay to walk away and find a new patch of earth. Build your own front row. Fill it with the mentors who believe in you, the friends who carry your secrets, and the strangers who become sisters. Before we go, I want to do something special. I want to fill the comments of this video with a different kind of data. I want you to tag or type the name of the person who showed up for you when your blood family didn't. Let's recognize the Evelyns, the Stellas, and the friends who became family. Let's show the world that those empty chairs are actually an opportunity to make room for the people who truly matter. And if you haven't found your chosen family yet, don't give up. Keep doing your work. Keep shining your light. Because there is someone out there, maybe in a lab, maybe in an office, maybe in the comments of this very video, who is waiting to save a seat for you. My name is Dr. Harper Vance. I'm a neuroscientist, a mentor, and a survivor of a family that didn't know how to see me. My chairs are finally full, and I've never felt more at home. Thank you for being part of my journey. Subscribe if you're ready to stop saving seats for people who don't show up. And remember, the best family you'll ever have is the one you have the courage to choose for yourself. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.